You walk into Walmart on a Tuesday morning and you see them. A family of six, plain dressed, the father with a long beard and a black hat pushing two carts stacked higher than his shoulders. You glance at what they are buying. No fancy electronics, no name brand snacks, nothing flashy, just simple items, cheap items. Items most people walk right past without a second look. 11 items, everyone under $5. Everyone on a Walmart shelf right now, and everyone could save your family when the lights go out, the shelves empty, or the dollar buys half of what it bought last year. The Amish are not preppers. They are something older, something quieter. They have been preparing for hard times for 300 years, ever since Jacob, a man, founded their community in 1693, and they have never failed. I learned this at a kitchen table in Holmes County, Ohio, from a man named Eli. His pantry has not been empty in 41 years, not once. Not during the 2008 crash, not during 2020, not during the ice storm of 2023. The first time I walked into one of these homes near Millersburg, I spent 20 minutes just looking at the basement shelves. This works whether you live on 40 acres or in a two-bedroom house in town. You do not need land. You do not need money. You need to know what to grab on your next trip to Walmart. And one of these 11 items you will not buy at all. It grows wild behind your house. It kept Amish families alive through the 1918 flu when millions of others died, and almost no one alive today remembers it. Let me start with the item that shocked me the most. Plain white salt. The blue cardboard cylinder you have walked past 1,000 times. 26 Oz for about $1.47. Eli's wife had 18 of them lined up in her root cellar, and when I asked why, she laughed at me like I was a child. Salt is not seasoning to the Amish. Salt is survival. Before refrigeration came to most rural Pennsylvania homes in the 1940s, salt was the only reason a family could eat meat in February. You pack a pork shoulder in salt, you keep it in a cool corner, and 6 months later it feeds your family. The United States Department of Agriculture published a bulletin in 1942 explaining that 1 lb of salt could preserve roughly 10 lb of pork indefinitely, 10 to 1. Think about what that means. A $2 bag of salt at Walmart can preserve $20 lb of meat. Now consider what happens when the power grid fails for a week, which has already happened twice in Texas in the last 5 years. Your freezer thaws. $300 of beef rots. But the Amish family down the road loses nothing because their meat was never in a freezer to begin with. They learned this from their grandparents, who learned it from theirs, going back to the Anabaptist farmers of the Alsace region in the 1600s. Salt also purifies water in small amounts. Salt cleans wounds. Salt preserves vegetables through fermentation, the same way sauerkraut has been made in Pennsylvania Dutch country since the 1720s. One bag does the work of a freezer, a medicine cabinet, and a canning shelf combined. And here is what makes this so unsettling. The average American kitchen contains less than 1 lb of salt at any given time. The average Amish kitchen contains 40. They are not hoarding. They are operating on a different definition of normal. They believe a household should be able to feed itself for 1 year without leaving the property. That belief was written into the Ordnung, the unwritten rules of Amish living, and it has not changed since 1865. So the next time you walk past that blue cylinder, ask yourself how your family would eat if the truck stopped running for 30 days. Because that question is exactly what the man in the black hat is answering when he puts 18 of them in his cart. But salt alone does not feed a family. And this brings us to the second item, which costs even less and does even more. White vinegar. The plastic gallon jug at Walmart sells for around $3.24. Eli kept 12 gallons under his kitchen sink. 12. I asked him why a man with no carpet and no laundry detergent needed 12 gallons of vinegar. He smiled and said, "Because vinegar is the cheapest doctor in the world." The Amish use vinegar to clean wounds, to soothe sunburns, to kill weeds in the garden, to preserve cucumbers and beets, to wash windows without streaks, to soften hard water in the laundry, and to settle an upset stomach. Cornell University's College of Agriculture published a study in 1971 confirming that a 5% solution of acetic acid, which is exactly what white vinegar is, kills 99% of common household bacteria, including E. coli and Salmonella. That is the same percentage advertised on a $40 bottle of disinfectant spray. The vinegar costs $3. Now, multiply that across every cleaning product in your house. The average American family spends $600 a year on cleaning supplies, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The average Amish family spends about $30. The difference is 12 gallons of vinegar and a bar of homemade soap. But it gets better. Vinegar pickles vegetables for storage without refrigeration. A glass jar of pickled cabbage stays edible on a pantry shelf for 2 years if it is sealed properly. 2 years from a vegetable that would rot in your refrigerator drawer in 3 weeks. The Amish learned this technique from German immigrants who arrived in Lancaster County in the 1730s, fleeing religious persecution and bringing with them the preservation methods that had kept their families alive through European winters for centuries. Those methods crossed the ocean. Those methods survived the Industrial Revolution. Those methods are sitting on the shelf at Walmart for $3.24, and almost nobody is buying them for the right reasons. The third item I want you to know about is even simpler, baking soda, a 1-to-1 LB box for under $1. The Amish use it to brush their teeth, to bake their bread, to put out grease fires, to deodorize root cellars, to soothe insect bites, and to wash dishes when soap runs short. 1 box, 6 functions, less than $1. You start to see the pattern. Every item in the cart does at least 3 things. Every item lasts at least a year on the shelf. Every item costs less than the cup of coffee you bought on the way to the store. This is not frugality. This is a complete philosophy of living that the rest of America abandoned around 1955 when television commercials convinced us that every problem needed its own specialized product. The Amish never watched those commercials. They never got the memo that you are supposed to need 40 different bottles under your sink. And because of that, when prices rise, when shelves empty, when the world shakes, their kitchens stay full and their bills stay small. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. The fourth item the Amish buy in bulk is something every homeowner can use this weekend with no permits, no contractors, and no special skills. Beeswax candles, or when those are too expensive, plain paraffin emergency candles, which Walmart sells in a box of 120 for around $4.90. Eli's wife had 300 of them stored in a wooden crate in the pantry. I asked if they ever lost power. She said no, they had never had power to lose. But the principle is the same. When darkness comes, you need light and you need it for more than just seeing. A single candle in a small room raises the temperature by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The Old Farmer's Almanac documented this in their 1887 edition in an article on winter cabin survival. 3 candles in a closed bedroom can keep an adult from freezing on a power outage night, even when outdoor temperatures drop into the teens. The Amish know this. They have been heating small spaces this way for 200 years. But here is the part that is for you specifically. The homeowner with a furnace and a thermostat and a power bill that keeps climbing. You can drop your winter heating costs by 20 to 30% without spending $1 on insulation simply by doing what the Amish do every night from October to April. They close off rooms. They do not heat the whole house. They heat the room they are in. And in the rooms they cannot heat with a stove, they place candles in glass jars on tables, which raise the local temperature just enough to make a sweater feel like a coat. Try this in one room of your house this winter. Take a bedroom you do not use. Close the door, close the heat vent, hang a heavy blanket over the doorway if there is a gap. Now your furnace is only working to heat the rooms where you actually live instead of fighting the cold air, seeping into a guest room nobody sleeps in. The Department of Energy ran a study in 2008 that confirmed this exact technique reduces residential heating costs by an average of 22% in homes built before 1980. 22% on a $400 winter heating bill, that is over $1,000 saved across a single cold season, and it cost you nothing. No insulation contractor, no window replacement, no new furnace. Just one closed door and one decision to stop heating empty rooms. The Amish have done this since the day they built their first house because they never had cheap energy to waste. You have had cheap energy your whole life, and now that it is no longer cheap, the old way is the only way that still makes sense. The fifth item, while we are on this topic, is wool blankets. Walmart sells a queen-size fleece blanket for around $4.88. The Amish layer them on every bed from November through March. A bed with 3 blankets and a flannel sheet stays warm at 55 carding room temperature. That means you can drop your nighttime thermostat from 68 degrees to 55 degrees and sleep better than you ever have. Your furnace runs 8 hours less per night, your bill drops again, and you wake up feeling rested in a way that overheated bedrooms never allow. These are not survival tricks for some imagined apocalypse. These are daily habits that put money back in your pocket starting tomorrow morning. But money saved is only half the story. The other half is what happens when the system itself fails. And the Amish have prepared for that scenario more carefully than any government agency in this country. The 6th item in the cart is matches, strike anywhere matches, the wooden kind your grandfather used. Walmart sells a box of 250 for about $2.50. Eli kept 200 boxes, 250,000 individual matches. I laughed when I saw them, and he did not laugh back. He said, "When the lighter runs out of fluid and the stove will not start and the lantern needs lighting, you do not want to be the man who only bought 1 box." He told me about the winter of 1978 when an ice storm knocked out power to most of Holmes County for 9 days. His neighbors, the English ones, ran out of matches by day 3. They came to him, and he gave away matches the same way you might give away cups of sugar. He did not run out. He had 3 years of matches in his cellar then, just like he does now. The 7th item is bar soap, plain ivory soap, or the cheapest Castile bar Walmart carries, usually under $1 a bar. The Amish buy it 20 bars at a time. Bar soap lasts indefinitely if kept dry. Liquid soap, the kind in pump bottles, expires within 2 years, and the plastic bottles eventually leak. 1 bar of soap, used carefully, lasts a family of 4 about 3 weeks for hand washing. That means 100 bars covers 2 years for about $80 total, compared to the $300 a typical American family spends on liquid soaps, body washes, and specialty cleansers in the same period. The 8th item is canning lids, the flat metal discs with the rubber seal. Walmart sells a box of 12 for around $2.40. The Amish buy them by the case, 200 at a time, because canning lids are the one part of home preservation that cannot be reused. The jars last forever, the rings last decades, but the lids must be new each time. And during the canning shortage of 2020, when grocery stores were empty and lids were selling for $10 a dozen on the internet, the Amish families I knew were canning 400 jars of tomatoes without missing a beat. They had bought their lids in 2018, 2 years before anyone else realized they were going to matter. The 9th item is cotton string, the basic ball of cotton twine Walmart sells in the hardware section for under $3. The Amish use it for everything: tying tomato plants to stakes, hanging herbs to dry from rafters, mending torn sacks, wrapping packages, replacing shoelaces, tying bundles of newspaper for kindling. A single ball lasts a family a year, but they keep 10 on hand because cotton twine, like matches, is the kind of thing you do not realize you need until you cannot get it. Now the 10th item deserves its own moment because it is the only food on earth that never spoils. Honey, real honey, not the corn syrup blend in the cheapest jar Walmart carries, usually around $4.99 for 12 Oz. Archaeologists found edible honey in Egyptian tombs over 3,000 years old. 3,000 years, still sweet, still edible. The Amish keep dozens of jars in the pantry, not just for tea and biscuits, but as medicine. A teaspoon of raw honey on a sore throat works better than most cough syrups. Honey applied to a small burn or cut accelerates healing because of its natural antibacterial properties, which were documented in a study by the University of Waikato in 1991 and have been confirmed by every major medical journal since. 1 jar, 3 uses, forever shelf life, $5. Before I give you the 11th item, one quick thing. Everything I have been digging out of these old USDA bulletins in these Amish kitchens, the 18 cylinders of salt in the root cellar, the 12 gallons of vinegar under the sink, the box of baking soda that does 6 jobs at once, the paraffin candles in the wooden crate, the wool blankets layered 3 deep, the 50,000 matches in the basement, the bar soap that lasts indefinitely, the case of canning lids bought 2 years before the shortage, the 10 balls of cotton twine, the dozen jars of honey that will outlive everyone in the house, the mullein leaves I'm about to walk you through, the breath line from the $8 fix video, the buried clay jar from the cooling trench video, the stew wall from the heating video, and all the other pieces I have pulled out of Lancaster County and Holmes County over the years. I have put it all in one place, room by room, season by season, in the order the families actually use it. It is called the Amish home system. Link is in the description. But stay right here because what Thomas Brendel documented in 1935 in the archives of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission is the 11th item, the one that grows wild behind your house, costs nothing, and kept Amish families alive through 1918 when millions died. Now the 11th item, this one changed everything for me. This one is not on a Walmart shelf. This one grows wild. This one cost the Amish nothing. And this one kept them alive through the flu. It came from a conversation I had with an elderly woman in her kitchen in Lancaster County on a cold afternoon in October, with the wood stove going and a kettle whistling. She showed me a small drawer in her cupboard, and inside that drawer were stacked, neatly tied with cotton string, dozens of bundles of dried mullein leaves. Mullein, the tall, yellow-flowering weed that grows wild on every roadside in America. She had not bought it. She had walked along the lane behind her house in late summer, picked the broad, fuzzy leaves, hung them in her attic to dry, and bundled them for winter. But here's the part that she shared with me. The part that almost no homesteading book mentions. The part I had to verify 3 times before I believed it. There is a document in the archives of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, cataloged under the title Folk Medicine of the Pennsylvania Germans, written in 1935 by a researcher named Thomas Brendel. In that document, Brendel records that the Amish and Mennonite settlers of southeastern Pennsylvania used mullein leaves for one specific purpose that has been almost completely forgotten by modern herbalism. They used the leaves, dried and crushed, mixed with a small amount of plain table salt as a chest poultice for severe respiratory illness. They would warm the mixture, wrap it in a cotton cloth, and place it on the chest of a person suffering from pneumonia or bronchitis. Brendel documented dozens of cases going back to the 1820s in which children and elderly people recovered from respiratory illness within 48 hours of receiving this poultice. He noted that the mortality rate from pneumonia in Amish communities was significantly lower than in surrounding English communities, and the doctors of the time could not explain it. Modern science can. Mullein contains compounds called saponins and mucilage that act as natural expectorants, breaking up congestion in the lungs. When applied as a warm poultice with salt, the salt draws moisture and inflammation outward through the skin, while the mullein compounds are absorbed transdermally. It is the same mechanism behind modern vapor rubs, except mullein is gentler, has no synthetic chemicals, and grows for free in your backyard. Now here is why this matters this weekend. You can walk along almost any country road in America right now. Identify mullein by its tall stalk and fuzzy gray-green leaves, harvest a few handfuls, and dry them in a paper bag hanging in your attic for 2 weeks. Then store them in a glass jar in your pantry, and you will have winter medicine that costs nothing and works as well as anything you can buy. The salt you already have from the first item on this list. The Amish woman who showed me her cupboard told me her mother and grandmother had used this exact poultice during the influenza epidemic of 1918, and not one member of her family had died, even as the world around them buried millions. She told me her grandmother's recipe was written in pencil on the inside cover of a King James Bible, passed down 4 generations. She said she had used it on her own children, on her grandchildren, and on herself. She had never once paid for cough medicine, never once filled a prescription for a chest infection, never once gone to a hospital for a respiratory issue, and she was 83 years old. The reason you have never heard of this is because mullein cannot be patented. It cannot be sold for profit at scale. There is no pharmaceutical company that will fund a study to prove what the Amish already know, because the result would not benefit anyone with a balance sheet. The knowledge was preserved by people who did not depend on the system that suppressed it. And now, because you watch this video, you have it too. What you just learned is not a list of survival items. It is a way of seeing, A way of walking into a Walmart and seeing not products, but possibilities. Not prices, but freedom. Not aisles, but the quiet wisdom of 300 years of people who refuse to forget how their grandparents lived. The man in the black hat with the cart full of cheap items is not poor. He is the wealthiest person in that store because he owes nothing, depends on no one, and could feed his family for a year if every truck in America stopped tomorrow. You can be that man, not by becoming Amish, not by buying a farm, not by changing your religion or your clothes or your community, just by buying differently, just by stocking the 11 items I shared with you today in the quantities the Amish buy them, and by remembering the 11th item, the one that grows wild and costs nothing, the one that has been keeping families alive since 1820. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do next. You already feel the weight lifting. You already see your kitchen, your pantry, your medicine cabinet differently than you did 28 minutes ago. Now, I want to ask you something specific, and I want you to actually answer in the comments because this audience tends to watch and leave without speaking, and your voice matters. Of the 11 items I shared today, which one surprised you the most? Was it the salt, the vinegar, the candles, the matches, or the mullein leaves growing for free along the road behind your house? Tell me below. I read every comment and I respond to as many as I can. And if you found value in what I shared, subscribe to this channel because we are building something here. We are not building an audience. We are building a community of people who are recovering knowledge that should never have been lost in the first place. Next week, I am sharing the 7 things the Amish never throw away, including one item from your kitchen trash that an Amish grandmother in Indiana told me she has been using for 63 years to keep her family healthy through every winter. You will not find that information anywhere else because the woman who told me has never been on the internet and her grandmother who taught her died in 1971. The knowledge is real, the source is real, and it is yours if you stay with me. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for being the kind of person who still believes that the old ways have something to teach us. The world is changing fast. Prices are rising. Systems are straining. But you and we are going to be just fine because we remember. 2 winters ago, in February of 2023, I drove out to a small Amish settlement in Holmes County, Ohio, during the worst ice storm that region had seen in nearly 40 years. Power lines came down across 3 counties. English families, the non-Amish neighbors, were sitting in cold, dark houses for 6 days waiting for the linemen to reach them. I stopped at a farmhouse owned by a man named Eli, who was 78 years old at the time, and his wife Mary, who was 76. Their kitchen was warm. A pot of bean soup was simmering on the wood stove, 3 kerosene lamps were burning, and the whole room smelled like cedar and bread and wood smoke. Mary handed me a tin cup of coffee that she had brewed on the back of the stove, and she said something I have never forgotten. She said, "The storm is only a storm to people who were not ready for winter." That is the whole philosophy in one sentence. The storm is only a storm to people who were not ready for winter. The Amish are not preparing for the apocalypse. They are not stockpiling because they expect society to collapse next Tuesday. They are simply living the way their great-grandparents lived in 1890, when there was no grid to fail, no supply chain to break, no app to deliver groceries in 15 minutes. They have built lives that do not require any of those things to function. And the 11 items I walked you through today, the salt, the vinegar, the baking soda, the candles, the wool blankets, the matches, the bar soap, the canning lids, the cotton string, the honey, and the mullein leaves growing free along the road. Those are not survival items in the doomsday sense. They are the basic infrastructure of a self-sufficient kitchen. They are what every American household kept on hand as recently as 1955, when my own grandmother was raising 5 children on a tobacco farm in Kentucky with no running water and a coal stove. We forgot that is the only thing that happened. We did not lose the knowledge because it was taken from us. We lost it because we stopped needing it for 2 or 3 generations, and the chain of teaching broke. Your great-grandmother knew how to render lard. Your grandmother probably watched her do it. Your mother maybe saw it once. You have never seen it. And your children, unless you decide otherwise, will grow up in a world where lard comes from a factory in a plastic tub with a label that says non-hydrogenated, as if that is a selling point. You can rebuild that chain. It starts with 1 mason jar of salt on a shelf in your pantry. It starts with 1 gallon of vinegar, $2.84 at the Walmart down the road from your house this weekend, before the next storm. If this story changed the way you look at the weeds in your garden or the simple items on a store shelf, please subscribe and like the channel. We are unearthing the history they tried to bury. Plant the seeds for your future. The next treasure chest of wisdom will open soon.